My name is Cathy Hayward. I run a communications agency called Magenta Associates, which we're specialists in comms for the built environment. We look after PR and research and other solutions for large FM service providers, CAFM providers, interior design firms, furniture firms, anybody really targeting the built environment and the workplace. I'm a journalist by background. I launched FM World magazine, which some of you may read, in 2004, and I edited it for 7 years before founding Magenta. I've also written as a freelance journalist and as a staff journo for a number of titles that you might have seen in Have I Got News For You? Things like Port Strategy magazine, an accounting technician, and supply chain management, all really thrilling titles. We usually spend a lot of our time talking about building companies' brands, but today I'm talking about building your personal brand. So brand me. So I do rather like pink, so I do apologise. You're lucky that I'm not wearing pink, which is, I do have a number of pink outfits. But before we start about talking about building your brand, you really need to think about what that brand is and how you're going to, and what your brand and values stand for. Any activity that you undertake to build your brand has to be aligned to those values, otherwise it just won't make sense to the wider market. So the way people behave represent their core values, such as honesty, transparency, accountability, and as I said, it gives them consistency from the point of view of the outside world. But how do you know what your brand values are? Try this exercise later on when you're on the train home or after the dinner. Think of your peak moments and think about when things were going really well, what values were in play, and alternatively, when things were going really badly, what values were being trampled on. When you have low moments, when you're frustrated, when you're not fulfilled, what values there aren't being fulfilled. From there you can work out what your core values are and then decide on how to set these across to the market. For example, if one of your values is sort of a coaching, a supportive value where you enjoy working with people, you might want to get involved with mentoring or a school governing type of role or something like that. Or if one of your core values or passions is green issues, you might want to get involved with sustainability groups. But it's got to be something that makes sense to the outside world. I was with a client recently at Red Bull, and I was talking to the marketing people there, and of course, it was the Formula One team, and the fact that Red Bull sponsored that and is part of that makes complete sense to the brand, doesn't it? Because it all kind of works its way through about this exciting "You've Got Wings" brands. But I'm sure we all know of examples of companies sponsoring things which don't make sense, and it's the same for your own brand. So, what sort of things can you do to get your brand out there? The top thing I think is networking. So by being here, you're halfway there. I think the key thing is to be selective. As FMs, we could go to an event every night of the week. The BIFM and their various special interest groups and regions have so many different events on, and it can be difficult to choose. So again, it's going back to your core values. What's important to you? It could be the region you're in. So if you're in London, great. Or if you're in the East region, go to those events which are most relevant to you. But of course, it's also about topics. So we talked about, rising FM groups, women's groups, security, retail, IT, whatever's relevant and sort of supports your core values. Choose those types of events. And I think the key thing is to plan very carefully. See if you can get an attendee list in advance. You can target particular people you want to talk to or to meet. Sometimes you can't do that. Sometimes events don't have that. If that's the case and you haven't been to that event before, perhaps ask the organisers if they have a buddy system. The BIFM do a lot of that with their events, and they'll introduce you to people. Or a client of ours, Liz Kentish & Co, Dave Kentish is over there, and we've all heard from Liz today. Her greater piece of advice, which I think is fantastic, is to go and talk to somebody on their own. Because if you're standing there with your glass of wine on your own, this all looks really jolly, but if you're the person standing to the other side with your glass of wine, you'll be really grateful when someone comes along and puts you out of your misery and talks to you. I think the key thing at events and to make yourself popular, it's back to the 2 ears, 1 mouth. Listen a lot more than you talk, and find out how you can help people, because then they'll remember you. If you've been the person who's stood there for 20 minutes and talked to the group about who you are, they won't necessarily remember you. They'll remember you if you've listened and asked some constructive questions about them. And find out how you can help them. It may be as simple as introducing them to somebody that they know, passing on a piece of research you'd come across or an article or anything like that, but make a point of doing something for them. You've kind of banked a favour. You may never need that favour, but it's a nice thing to do, and they'll hopefully remember you fondly when the time may come to return that favour. And always follow up after an event, whether it's sending someone a thank you note. Liz always recommends sending handwritten notes, which I think is really lovely. If you've got good handwriting, send a little handwritten note or connect with them on LinkedIn or follow-up email or whatever it is. And do what you said you would. And the key thing is, a lot of these photos I realise have people with wine in them, and it can be very. I've seen some people. I do a lot of volunteering with the BIFM, which I'll talk about in a minute, and we've seen people really get quite trolleyed at our events, and we have to get rid of them at the end of the evening. Don't do that. It's really bad. It can be quite nerve-wracking if you're not used to networking, but just don't drink too much and be the person who has to be carried out or asked to leave. So volunteering is a brilliant way of giving back to the industry and getting involved in the industry and getting your brand out there. This is Jason Cousins, who is chair of the BIFM London region. He's also the facilities director of Bond Dickinson, a law firm in London and Newcastle, I think. And this is him at an event back in February that we ran. He opens all our events and talks a little bit about the London region. And it's a great brand boost for him. And he does it as a mixture of giving back to the industry and also as a, he moves jobs every 4 or 5 years or whatever, and a way to get his brand out there for when he's looking for his next role. But choose wisely where you spend your volunteering time. Organisations like the BIFM and CIBSE and others are really brilliant at sapping volunteers' time, and it can be really difficult to say no. And once you find yourself in, it's very difficult. It's like sort of sticky mud. You can't get out. There are loads of benefits. I joined the London region as a committee member back in 2011 when I set up Magenta. I'd always worked for large corporates. And I thought, God, Christ, I'm going to be on my own in my house all day launching a business. It's going to be quite lonely. So I thought by joining the BIFM London Region Committee, I'd have a team of people around me. I could get involved with team events, learn new skills. Event organisation has been great. Learnt lots of PowerPoint-related skills, public speaking stuff that I hadn't really ever done before. So by joining a committee, you become part of a bigger team, you expand your network, you learn new skills, and of course you get known, because when Jason's not doing that, I'm the one who has to introduce the events as deputy chair. So it's a brilliant opportunity, and we get involved in all sorts of things. For many of us, of course, it's quite time-consuming volunteering and coming to events, and you might only manage a couple of events a year. But most of us can actually spend some time boosting our profile on social media. It doesn't take long, and there's numerous guides on the internet about setting up on LinkedIn, Facebook. And I had my first message from WhatsApp from a potential client today, which was quite interesting. Mostly I found it's been sort of mums groups or friends groups, but someone contacted me through WhatsApp. But it doesn't take long to set yourself up on these. And despite so many people talking about social media as something completely different, it's not. It's just another way of communicating, and I think you need to treat it as such. So you see some people who use it very much as a publications tool, and they're constantly just sending out information at you. But of course, that's a bit like the person standing in the networking event yakking at you for 20 minutes. You really need to be the person who is having a dialogue with people, sharing information, having a conversation like you would in real life. It's not just a publications tool. We have loads of guides on our website about this, and if anybody wants any of them, I'm very happy to send them to you afterwards. Just give me your email address. But again, it goes back to your values, what you say. Years ago, we could pretend to be somebody we weren't, perhaps in a sort of a professional setting, but now everything is very transparent. I went through a stage where I wouldn't have anybody that I knew professionally as a Facebook friend, but that's kind of all changed now. And you can, everything is you have to be very consistent and professional, and as you are in real life, you can't hide anything. So that kind of goes back to sticking to your values at all times. Now, you won't be surprised to say that my background as a journalist, getting your name in the press is obviously really good for your publicity and for improving your brand. And it's not particularly difficult, particularly as an individual. Sounds a bit scary, but the trade press is really crying out for good content, particularly non-salesy content. It's always easy to get what I call PR puffery pieces, but when the press wants some really good content, they'd be delighted to hear from you. The front page or the inside cover of all these magazines has what's called a flannel panel, which has all the contact details for the journalists, or you can find them on LinkedIn. Just drop them a note, say who you are and what your idea is. Be quite short, don't go into, don't write the article itself in the pitch, and see what they say. Follow up with them if you don't hear, and if they completely ignore you, just move on to the next one. But there are so many magazines in the FM space that I'm sure there's one or two which would be very interested in hearing from you. Do get your comms team's permission. The amount of times when certainly I was on the journalist side and you'd publish an article and the comms team would come down you like a ton of bricks. You're like, well, it's really up to the internal person to get the comms team permission. And PR departments and PR agencies can be very helpful in ghostwriting articles if you're not feeling particularly confident about that. It can also help you become a household name. When I was at FM World, I started off my career in FM working for Europa Facility Services, and I'd made quite a ton of FM friends there. So when I started editing FM World, I went back to one of them, a chap called Gavin Ford, who was then at the FM at Brighton University, and he wrote a regular column for FM World about his life and career for about, I think, six years or so. And then I think Ian Broadbent took over from him. But writing a column or something like that can really get your brand out there. And as long as you're careful and sensible about what you write, it can be a really useful tool. John Bowen now writes, he's a consultant, now writes a regular column, a blog for FM World now. So there's lots of opportunities. And editors will then come to you. If you have a particular topic, we have a client who has a very strong HR director, and she's always been asked for comments on any HR-related issue within FM. And in fact, we've managed to get her into the national press quite a lot, representing this particular client. So if you manage to kind of own a particular topic, it can be really beneficial to you and to your organisation. And for those of you who say you have nothing that could possibly be of interest to any readers, I ask you to think laterally. My colleague Esme will laugh here. This is an article that we had published in the Telegraph. And as a small agency, we've had articles about us in Marie Claire, which was a piece about my inability or ability to run a company and run 3 children. It feels like running 3 children sometimes. We've had a piece in The Guardian about leadership within SMEs, and then this piece in The Telegraph about I set up the company with my now ex-husband, and it's not a piece about how you can make success of a business, even if you didn't make a success of the marriage, and how we get on generally pretty well now. So there's always an angle there. So go out, talk to people, talk to your colleagues, talk to your PR people internally or externally, and there may well be a really good article. Awards. This time of year, we're quite busy writing award entries for many of our clients. The BIFM and PFM awards entry deadlines are about a month or so away now. And awards are a brilliant way, not just of boosting your own brand and your own profile and that of your team and organisation, but also a great motivating factor. We work with companies for a couple of months, sometimes putting award entries together. And it's such a motivating, exciting thing to do, and they feel so thrilled talking about it. So it can be a thing that really brings people together. If you do win, and it's so exciting when one of our clients wins, God, we're even more excited than the client, I think, sometimes, make sure you make the most of it, both internally and externally, and really shout about what you've done, because these awards now are the standard is so high that to win is a really prestigious thing. Also think about internal awards. We've been working with a very large software company, and they have just recently been bought by an even larger competitor, and they have a very long-standing internal award system for their group real estate and facilities team across Europe, and they're now boosting that even more so that the competitor doesn't change their way of doing things. But that sort of thing is brilliant, and it's brought all their different service partners across Europe together to compete for these awards, and it's a really fantastic, motivating thing. But this is us on the beach in Brighton, or we were a year ago. We're a bit bigger now as an organisation. But we have a short guide to boosting your brand, which is, again, that's available on our website. We've got numerous other guides. Please do give me your card or email address afterwards, and I'll be happy to send them to you.